Andy, you produced and directed some great, great movies, and everyone seems to get better. Can you give me a little bit of the story behind your career? You started from where? Alabama. How do you get from Alabama to making movies like this?
Every athlete needs somebody to push them, and I was grateful for Movieguide and for you being one of those instigators. That we were these kids that had done music videos for years and had this desire to do movies. And I think along with a lot of other Christians that were starting to get involved in the movie industry after Christianity kind of being out of that for a while, we had a lot to learn. And so with each try, I would always show you, and you were like kind of that, driven coach that would be like, it's good, you can do a lot better. You can do a lot better. And it was always just not quite good enough. And so I think one of the things that we adopted early on is quality is something we always chase. It's not something we ever necessarily catch. You always just try to get a little bit better. And it was in this hallway right out front that you had just seen a copy of a screener of I Can Only Imagine. And you walked by and you just looked at me, and in a few short words, you shook my hand and you said, my boy, I wept. And you kept walking, and I was like, we made it.
You made it.
So God's just opened up the doors, and with I Can Only Imagine, that was the #1 independent film of 2018. And it was this little $7 million film that did $86 million in the box office. And the studio system, Lionsgate, that we work with, stood up and noticed and said, we want to be in business with you guys. So they really kind of poured fuel on the fire and said, make more movies like this. Make sure that it has the content that connects with your audience. And so with that, the quality of the collaborators went up. We were able to go out and recruit really great filmmakers like John Gunn that did The Case for Christ, and then kind of create this team to say, how can we kind of make sure that we don't go backwards?
Tell me, what was the transition from Alabama?
My father, Hank Erwin, was a radio guy himself,
And a friend.
And he would always actually point you out in the crowd. And we would come to NRB when he was a radio broadcaster and I was a kid. And we'd be at this prayer breakfast that we're at right now, and I would be sitting in the crowd. And my dad would always point you out and be like, that's Ted Baehr. He's an important man. You got to get his attention. And there was always a friendship between the two of you. And so my brother and I started out as kind of, I guess what you call studio rats. My dad was in radio and television. We were always in the background helping out. A lot like what your kids have done. It's just grow up around it. But that transition from Alabama to Hollywood was definitely a difficult one. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that just happen with, God's blessing and timing that you can't repeat. But a lot of it was just kind of blue collar hustle, and like, we may not be the most talented people in the room, but we dare anybody to outwork us. And so for years we wouldn't get that chance until we tried to break into music videos, and everybody would close the door in our face saying we don't really want help from Birmingham. And Michael W. Smith was an artist Christian artist that wanted some help on a video. And John and I said, there was a little small budget video. And we said, we need to have something good on our resume. So if we were to pay for the rest of the video ourselves, could we do something big? Like, great. So we went out, got a $10,000 loan to produce a bigger music video. And that music video was hugely popular and opened the doors for us to pursue film until we ended up, on the set of a Kendrick Brothers movie of Courageous. And my brother was running second unit for Stephen and Alex. And we had kind of just said, there's no way to make that jump to doing feature film. And Alex said, John, what are you guys doing with your lives? And he said, I'm just here for a paycheck, Alex. And he said, it's time for you and your brother to step off the sidelines and find your stories. And then John came home with this tiny little micro-budget film, October Baby, and that was our transition from Birmingham to where we ended up. And just humble beginnings, stumbled forward, made a lot of mistakes, but then it wasn't until we did Woodlawn. And when we did Woodlawn, we found our voice, that we tell true stories, stories of redemption, and it's just the power of a testimony. And when we did that, that wasn't the big success, but that was where we found our voice. And then that led to I Can Only Imagine. And when we found that, we're like, okay, this is the moment. And God blew open the doors.
Well, Movieguide Awards has primarily been given out to Hollywood. So you've not only gotten into Hollywood, but you've become outstanding.
Thank you.
And the appreciation you have from the Christian community is almost being exceeded by the appreciation from the secular community, whether it's Lionsgate. And you've kept humble. How did you do that?
We're there to serve an audience. I think very similar to what Movieguide has done over the years is saying you don't have to compromise your Christianity in order to create great art.
Yeah.
And I think you've been at the forefront of that. And so, for us, we serve an audience. We want to create a product that is safe for the whole family, something that celebrates those values that we all hold near and dear as Christians. But what we found is when we find these stories that naturally have the power of redemption in them, there's something universally relatable that's attractive to an outside crowd. And so for us, when we find a story like an I Can Only Imagine that tells the power of the gospel in action, but it also is a very universally relatable father-son story, this curious outside audience steps in and says, what's all the noise about? And so for us, what keeps us humble is we're stewards of a moment. However long that moment lasts, we want to keep telling stories that matter, stories that can change lives. And so we're there at the service of people that have trusted us with those stories and at an audience that continues to support us with their tickets. And so I'm excited, hopefully, to hand that baton to generations coming behind us the way that you've handed to us and say, what are those next storytellers that maybe us blazing part of a trail will lead to them doing products that far exceed anything we've done. And so for whatever period of time we have a baton in our hands, we're going to run fast and we're going to look for who's coming behind us. And so we're excited about the future.